Welcome to Shatter.
Support the channel by liking, commenting, and subscribing. I promise even more interesting stories. She said it like she was offering me a favor. Not an apology. Not a warning. Just 5 words, tossed across the table between 2 half-finished plates of takeout in a room that had already gone cold. I just need some space. I looked at her for maybe 5 seconds. Long enough to memorize her face in that moment. Perfect makeup. Bare shoulders. Glass of wine between her fingers. Calm. Rehearsed. Like she had practiced it in the mirror all week. I didn't ask why. I didn't press. I just nodded and said, "Take all the space you need." She smiled soft, relieved. She thought I'd taken the bait. She had no idea she'd just pulled the pin. That was a Thursday night. She left the following morning. A weekend trip with friends to unplug. Just a few days, she said. A breather. No need to overthink it. But I didn't need to overthink. I just needed to observe. And what I saw was a woman already halfway out the door, hoping I'd hold it open while she tested the waters. But I wasn't going to hold anything. I wasn't going to wait. I wasn't going to be a warm, safe placeholder while she explored her options in the background. That night, I changed the passwords. Unlinked her from the accounts she barely noticed we shared. Netflix, Hulu, Amazon Prime, DoorDash. The invisible threads she took for granted. I deleted her fingerprint from the phone and the smart lock. She wanted space. Now she had no access. And in return, I took something back. My awareness. I stopped pretending I didn't notice how long she stayed online after midnight. I stopped ignoring the muted notifications when I walked past her phone. I stopped giving her the benefit of the doubt. She thought she was creating distance. But what she really created was a window. And through that window, I could finally see everything clearly. She wanted time. She wanted air. She wanted the freedom to decide if I was still worth loving. What she didn't realize, I had already decided if she was worth waiting for. And the answer came in the form of silence, of stillness, of me sitting in that same room the next night, alone, but not broken. I didn't send messages. I didn't ask where she was. I didn't check her location. I just went to sleep early, woke up at 5 a.m., hit the gym, drank black coffee, and looked in the mirror like I hadn't in months. And for the first time in a long time, the man staring back didn't look confused. He looked done. Not angry. Not sad. Strategic. I knew exactly how this was going to end. And she had no idea what was already in motion. She left with 2 bags and a playlist called Reset. Didn't hug me goodbye. Just said she'd call if she felt like talking. I nodded and went back to cleaning the coffee machine like it was a normal Friday. As soon as the car disappeared down the street, I opened my laptop. This wasn't grief. It was logistics. I checked bank transactions. Logins. I pulled data, not feelings. Nothing illegal. Just clarity. And it didn't take much to see what she was trying to keep blurry. New restaurant charges I'd never heard of. Payments split with names that weren't in her contacts. Venmo notes with fake emojis and private privacy settings. Gym check-ins in places she didn't belong. The breadcrumbs weren't subtle. They were lazy. Like she wanted to be caught but not confronted. Like she assumed I'd never check. But I wasn't planning to confront her. I was building a timeline. By the time her girl's trip reached the hotel check-in, I already knew who wasn't a girl. I found his name by accident. Aiden. Same guy she used to call just a friend from work. I remembered that smirk he gave me at the office party last year. The too long eye contact. Back then, I brushed it off. I was still trying to be a trusting man. But trust, I learned, is only admirable when it's not used against you. That weekend, I didn't sit at home sulking. I moved. I printed documents. Rented a small storage unit under my own name. Transferred key assets. Booked a session with a divorce attorney, not to file, not yet, but to understand what it would look like when I did. Because it wasn't if anymore. It was when. She posted photos from a rooftop bar. Her face turned slightly to the side, candid. Captioned, breathing. Not for me, of course. For him. For attention. For reaction. But I didn't react. Not even a like. I stayed invisible. Because strategy lives in silence. Sunday night, she texted, might stay a little longer. I stared at it. No response. No read receipt. Let her wonder. That's when I started packing her things, not all of them, just the symbols. Her favorite books. Her skincare. That dumb frame quote about choosing joy. Into boxes. Into the garage. Not out of anger. But because her presence no longer matched her reality. By Monday, I had changed my emergency contact at work. By Tuesday, I stopped using we in conversations. By Wednesday, I slept better than I had in 6 months. She thought she was on a break, but I was already building a life where her return wasn't a chapter. It was a footnote. She came back Tuesday night, 3 days later than planned. No explanation. No apology. Just a tired smile and a suitcase that looked heavier than when she left. I heard the garage door roll up. I didn't move from the kitchen. She walked in, set her bags down, and asked how I'd been. I said I'd been productive. She paused, probably expecting warmth. But I didn't offer any. That moment told her more than any argument ever could. She walked through the house slowly, like she was trying to remember where everything belonged. Like the space felt different. It did. The energy had shifted. I had scrubbed it clean of her echo, rearranged furniture, opened windows, replaced the rug she chose. Small things. Quiet signals. She noticed the boxes in the garage, said nothing, but I watched her eyes lock onto them like a silent alarm had been tripped. She didn't ask. She knew. That night, she stayed on her side of the bed. I could feel the tension, but I didn't engage. I lay still, staring at the ceiling, while she scrolled through her phone like nothing had changed. But everything had. Her presence didn't mean anything anymore. She tried to test the waters the next morning, asked if I wanted to get dinner later that week. I told her I was busy. She blinked, confused. She'd expected time to fix what her words had fractured. She didn't understand yet that silence wasn't a pause. It was a conclusion. I had already left emotionally. Now I was just letting the logistics catch up. Over the next few days, she circled me, made coffee in the morning, sent casual texts during the day, complimented my new shirt. Each one a tiny hook, trying to pull me back. I responded with politeness, not affection. Measured, controlled, unreachable. She started watching me. I could feel her eyes on me longer. She noticed I wasn't reacting to anything. Not her stories, not her attempts at affection, not her carefully crafted presence. I wasn't playing the game anymore. I wasn't even holding the pieces. One night, I caught her sitting in the living room, staring at her phone like it had betrayed her, probably waiting for a text that never came from me or from him. That was the beauty of it. She thought she could toggle between lives. What she didn't realize was, both lives were leaving her behind. By the end of the week, I had booked a second meeting with the lawyer. Quietly, privately. I wasn't rushing it. I was preparing it like a man sharpens a blade, slow, focused, with purpose. She came home to a house, but I was no longer inside it. Not really. I didn't slam the door. I didn't pack a bag in front of her. I didn't even raise my voice. But I started disappearing. It began with small absences, morning runs that stretched longer, nights out that I didn't explain, entire Sundays spent at the office. And when she asked questions, I gave answers that meant nothing. Short, precise, non-negotiable. She noticed, but she couldn't prove anything. And I never gave her more than I had to. Because this wasn't revenge. It was detachment. I had spent years being the predictable man. The steady one. The anchor she could return to after testing how far she could drift. But now, I was gone in all the ways that mattered emotionally, mentally, spiritually. She'd wake up and find me already gone. She'd ask if I wanted to watch something and I'd tell her I was tired. I wasn't. I just didn't care anymore. Her presence in the room no longer registered. And she felt it. She tried harder. Wore dresses she hadn't worn in months. Cooked meals she used to make when we first met. Lit candles. Played soft music. But all of it landed flat. Because once respect dies, there's nothing left to save. I started deleting photos. Quietly. I removed our pictures from my phone, from the cloud, from the framed memories on the shelf. I didn't burn them. That would have meant they still held power. I just erased them. She came home one evening and asked if I'd seen the photo album. I told her I didn't know. She didn't press. That's when it began to hit her. This wasn't a phase. She stopped trying to impress me and started trying to hold on. But it was already too late. I had mentally filed for divorce weeks before the paperwork existed. The man she thought she could lose and win back? He no longer stood across from her. She scrolled through her messages one night, probably hoping for something from Aiden. But that line had gone cold. I hadn't said a word to him. I didn't have to. Whatever they had wasn't built for pressure. It was only fun when no one was watching. And now, I was watching everything quietly, calmly, without expression. I wasn't planning revenge. I was preparing an exit so clean she'd have nothing left to fight. I wanted her to feel the absence the way I had felt the betrayal, not loud, not public, but slow and undeniable, like oxygen thinning. She still hadn't noticed the box with her name on it in the hallway closet, but she would, very soon, and when she did, there'd be no scene. Only the sound of everything she once controlled, slipping away. The real power isn't in confrontation. It's in letting someone feel the weight of your absence while you're still in the same room. I didn't give her ultimatums. I didn't set rules. I didn't ask her to explain anything. I just removed myself from every dynamic we used to share. If she cooked, I ate later. If she entered a room, I stayed quiet. I moved through the house like a shadow present, but unreachable. One morning, I disabled her access to the shared account. Quietly. No notice. She found out when her card declined at a salon. She texted me, then called. I ignored both. She came home agitated, trying to mask it with a casual tone. I just told her the account was under review. She didn't push further. I had done something she wasn't prepared for. I broke the pattern. She was used to guilt followed by repair. Distance followed by reassurance. But now there was no conversation. No explanations. Just a wall she couldn't climb. And it drove her mad in the quietest way. I didn't lash out. I didn't expose anything. Instead, I started pulling threads behind the scenes. I found out Aiden had a girlfriend. She didn't know. I did. I collected screenshots. I didn't send them. I stored them in a folder named Exit. For the lawyer. For insurance. For clarity, not revenge. Because by now, I had stopped seeing her as a partner. She was a transaction. A situation to be closed cleanly. At work, I adjusted my emergency contacts. Removed her name. I changed my insurance beneficiary. I revised my will. Step by step, I was peeling her off my life like a sticker, slow enough not to rip anything, but deliberate enough to leave no trace. She asked if we could have a real talk soon. I nodded. That was enough to calm her for now. She had no idea that real talk was already scheduled, just not with her. It was with the attorney. We discussed timing, division, quiet filings. No social damage. No public scenes. The goal wasn't destruction, it was disappearance. She wanted to explore her freedom? Fine. She could do it without my last name, without access, and without warning. I told the lawyer I didn't want drama. Just distance. Just clarity. Just the clean exit of a man who's not angry, but finished. By the time she'd notice, it would all be done. No war. Just the cold silence of a man who no longer explains himself. The first fracture didn't come from me. It came from the outside. Someone else noticed before she did. It started with a question at a dinner party, small, seemingly innocent. Where's Mark been lately? She laughed it off, said I was swamped with work. But I shifted. Friends exchanged glances. People feel tension before it's admitted. And in our circle, perception is reality. I stayed quiet, but visible. I stopped showing up to the events she hosted. I declined invites she forwarded. I made myself a ghost in places she once used me as a shield. And without that shield, her image began to thin. She started losing ground in conversations. People stopped asking about us. Her friends stopped including me in group texts. Some of them reached out privately, curious, gentle, probing. I said nothing incriminating. I didn't vent. I didn't reveal. I let their imagination do the work. Because truth whispered from silence spreads faster than any accusation. Then came the moment that cracked her facade. We were at her friend's engagement party. I hadn't planned to go, but I showed up, silent, sharp, dressed for war. I didn't touch her. I didn't stand beside her. I moved through the crowd like a guest, not a partner. She watched me from across the room, trying to read my face. But there was nothing left to read. And then it happened. A mutual friend, unaware of the tension, asked her, "Is it true you and Aiden went to Napa last month?" Her eyes froze. Smile cracked. That one name, spoken out loud in public, landed like glass shattering on tile. She recovered fast, lied fast, said it was a group trip. But the damage was done. Her image had slipped. And I didn't say a word. I didn't nod. I didn't even look at her. Because silence, placed at the right moment, is louder than confession. From that day, the whispers began. Quiet judgment. The look people give when they've connected dots you tried to scatter. Not out of cruelty, just confirmation. She wasn't who she portrayed. And I wasn't where she assumed I'd always be. She became reactive. Suddenly overposting online. Tagging me in old photos. Resharing memories. None of it worked. I had moved on, publicly invisible, privately surgical. Every week that passed, another rope untied. She was still living in a house we once shared. But I was already designing a life where she no longer existed, not just physically, but reputationally. She had built her image on curated perception. Now it was crumbling, without me raising my voice once. By now, the house wasn't a home. It was a mirror. Every room reflected back who she had become and who I no longer was. She moved through it like a stranger, cooking meals no one requested, asking questions she didn't care to hear answered, laughing too loud at things no one said. The silence between us wasn't angry, it was clinical. She started coming home earlier, staying in more, leaving her phone face down. She thought presence could replace damage. But I wasn't absent. I was simply unreachable. I watched her go through phases: charm, concern, guilt, fear, each one sharper than the last. But nothing she did landed. I wasn't responding to her rhythm anymore. I had created my own tempo, one that didn't include her. One night, I came home late. She was sitting in the living room, still dressed for some plan that clearly hadn't happened. Makeup untouched, eyes heavy. She asked if I wanted to talk. I told her I had work in the morning. She sat there for a long time after I walked upstairs. The next day, she tried a new angle, reminding me of old times. She mentioned the first trip we ever took, the songs we used to play. But memory doesn't rebuild trust. It only reminds you how far you've drifted from where you once stood. And I had drifted far. She began reaching out to mutual friends more. Do you think he's okay? Have you talked to him lately? I heard about it all. People forwarded screenshots. No one took her side. Not because they were loyal to me, but because they'd seen the shift. They saw what I had become. Not angry, not wounded, just untouchable. That terrified her. She started spiraling inward, staying in bed later, leaving her phone untouched for hours. She wore clothes that didn't try. She cooked meals she didn't eat. The apartment was spotless, yet hollow. I was there, but not available. And she couldn't stand it. Because control isn't about volume. It's about predictability. And now she couldn't predict me. She didn't know if I'd speak or stay silent, if I'd leave or sleep beside her, if I'd vanish or strike. But I didn't need to do any of that. My detachment was the punishment. And the silence between us had become a sentence she couldn't escape. It echoed louder than any fight we ever had. She thought I was waiting for closure. She didn't understand she was already living inside it. She finally broke. It was a Thursday night, rain outside, thunder distant, like a warning that came too late. I was reading on the couch. Calm. Steady. She came downstairs and stood in front of me like a student preparing to fail a test she didn't study for. She asked if we were okay. I didn't answer right away. I closed my book slowly, placed it beside me, and looked at her. Not like a husband. Not even like a man. I looked at her the way an architect looks at a crumbling building. Curious, detached, calculating. Then I said, "What do you think?" She hesitated. Said things had felt distant. That we hadn't been connecting. That maybe we needed to talk. Go away for a weekend. Reset. I nodded once. Not in agreement. Just acknowledgement. Like she'd spoken, and the sound had landed somewhere irrelevant. That's when she panicked. Her voice raised. Not a scream, but desperation thinly veiled by volume. She mentioned the past. Our promises. How we'd built this life together. She asked if I still loved her. I didn't respond. Not because I didn't know the answer, but because it no longer mattered. She started crying. Said she didn't know when things got this bad. That she missed us. That she wanted to fix it. That she'd do whatever it took. But I had already done the math. Her tears were real, but late. Her regret was loud, but misplaced. Because now, even if she had turned into the perfect wife overnight, it wouldn't undo the moment she quietly traded commitment for curiosity. When she chose silence with Aiden over truth with me. When she walked away, thinking I'd be here no matter how far she drifted. She sat on the floor, hands over her face, whispering something I didn't try to hear. And I just watched. Not out of cruelty, but out of peace. Because in that moment, I saw the full arc of who she was. Not a villain. Just someone who thought loyalty was optional. She eventually looked up and asked if I wanted to end this. I told her, it's already over. She didn't move. She didn't speak. She just stared. And I stood up. Not dramatically. Just final. Walked upstairs. Closed the door. Slept like a man who'd stopped asking for answers. Because I had already built my exit. And her reaction came exactly on schedule. Too little. Too late. Too quiet against the sound of a man who had already left. The fallout didn't come as a storm. It came as an absence. Not of me, but of everything that once upheld her image. She started unraveling in quiet ways. Her social media dried up. No more staged breakfasts, no curated captions. Friends stopped tagging her. Mutuals unfollowed. Her inbox, once a constant hum of validation, went silent. No new comments. No shared memories. Just echo. The people who once saw her as magnetic now kept their distance. No one accused her. No one called her out. But everyone knew. Whispers did what I never had to. Her reputation, once wrapped in curated smiles and half-truths, began to erode in real time. The invitations stopped coming. Clients grew colder. Networking circles she once dominated now looked through her like she wasn't even there. She tried to repair it. Reached out to old friends. Tried to reclaim ground. She even sent a message to my sister, who never responded. That silence probably stung more than anything I could have said. Meanwhile, I was rising. Not dramatically. Not publicly. But completely. I upgraded my wardrobe. Not to impress, but to shed. I reconnected with people she had once subtly pushed away. I rejoined old routines, late-night runs, weekend trips with college friends, quiet Sundays with books instead of arguments. I posted nothing. I explained nothing. But everyone saw the shift. One day, she came home to find the living room empty. Not ransacked, just cleared. The art she bought gone. The bookshelf I built, dismantled. My things had vanished, piece by piece, over weeks. She hadn't noticed. Because she wasn't looking. That same evening, she found the envelope. Thick, plain, sealed with precision. Inside, the formal petition. Divorce papers. Already signed. Already filed. No threats. No letter. Just facts. She didn't scream. She didn't chase me down. She sat on the edge of the bed for almost an hour, holding that envelope like it weighed more than anything she'd ever touched. And I was already at a friend's lake house. Calm. Disconnected. Focused. Because this wasn't revenge. It was rebirth. She lost everything she built around perception. And I gained something she never valued. Peace. By the time she realized what she'd gambled, I wasn't angry anymore. I was gone. And the silence she left behind had finally answered her louder than any closure ever could. I returned home once more. Not to speak. Not to revisit. Just to finish. The apartment was quiet, dim. A single lamp was on in the corner. She was there, sitting at the dining table, still in yesterday's clothes, eyes fixed on the untouched divorce papers. Her face looked older. Not from time. From truth. She didn't look up when I walked in. And I didn't sit. I gathered the last box from the hallway, documents, a few books, a framed photo from a lifetime ago. She didn't ask where I was going. She knew. This wasn't a trial separation. This was final execution. She just hadn't believed I'd pull the trigger. Because men like me usually don't. Men like me absorb, endure, delay. Until we don't. She whispered something under her breath. I didn't stop to hear it. The silence between us had already said everything. I placed a key on the counter. Not hers, mine. A symbol that I wasn't coming back. I had already changed the locks on the new place. Already set up a new life. A smaller apartment. Fewer things. More space. Not physically. Mentally. As I walked toward the door, she finally stood up. But she didn't follow. She just stood there, waiting for something. Maybe a speech. Maybe a final burst of anger or confession. But I owed her nothing. I had given everything. And now, there was nothing left to explain. So I looked at her, not with hate, not with sadness. Just with clarity. Then I said the only sentence I had rehearsed in months. One line. No edge. No rage. Just the truth. I didn't disappear. I just stopped showing up where I wasn't respected. I walked out. No slamming door. No final glance. Just a man reclaiming what was his long before she forgot the value of it. Himself. The days that followed were quiet. Peaceful. Free. People reached out. Some congratulated. Some asked questions. I answered none. Because explanation belongs to the past. I was already future. I started running again. Not to escape. But because I could. I slept better. Ate slower. Spoke less. Thought clearer. And every part of me that had been worn thin from overextending now felt sharp again. I was no longer healing. I was rebuilt. She remained where she chose to be, surrounded by silence, shadows, and the echo of a man she thought would never leave. But I did. And in doing so, I became untouchable. Not louder. Just gone. Real men don't explode. They exit. Subscribe for more power stories.